I think, if anything, we can move on the additional holiday.
Don't let the holiday thing worry you too much. We've been kind of holding out on that one. Now, maybe that's a bone you can throw for us when the time is right.
So you'd move on the holiday then?
We've been working on an idea of an additional holiday on the employee's birthday. That way we wouldn't have everybody off at the same time.
I think it should be a reward for a good absenteeism record. If he's got a good record, he gets the additional holiday. If he doesn't, he doesn't.
We can't do that. It's like punishment.
A bad absenteeism record ought to be punished.
Look, I've been there. You hang a holiday out there like a carrot, and you got a bigger emotional issue than residency.
I think you're on the right track with the birthday approach, but not tied to absenteeism.
It sounds as though we could take another look at the educational incentive.
I tell you, Ray, we just can't afford it.
What about City College? Suppose we made some kind of arrangement where our employees could take job-related courses free of charge. I really doubt if many people take advantage of those courses anyway.
They will if we give in to the union on the second stage of that demand.
Salary increases upon completion of the course.
Right.
That's out. Absolutely out. Even if we could afford it.
She's right, Sam. We can't move there.
I understand your position. Let's look at the no strike clause.
That's our proposal. Our committee is really under the gun on this one. The mayor wants it, and we've got to have it.
Give me your feelings about arbitration.
We have to keep the employees' appeal board. After all, it's written into the civil service system.
I wasn't aware they wanted to abolish the board.
Right here in my notes. Joe said the Employee Appeals Board has got to go.
Every time we start to make progress on this, they change their position.
What we'd like to do is give them quid pro quo. Now, if they will give us our no-strike clause, we'll give them binding impartial arbitration as a final step in the employee appeals procedure. But the board has got to stay.
Okay. Now, where do you stand at this point on wages?
We're here. We're ready to negotiate.
You can't negotiate what you don't have.
I hear you talking, but I don't hear you saying anything. Either you can move on wages or you can't. Now, your current proposal provides for an increase of 5% per year across the board. There's a pretty wide difference between your 5% and what they want. Now, what can you do on a 2-year basis?
It's hard to say, Sam. Now, we've re-examined our position on wages, and I think we have some latitude for improving our last offer. But this money has to buy an agreement, or we won't spend it.
So you could move on wages?
We could move some, a little, if it will buy an agreement. And that's where I think you can help us.
I understand. Now tell me about residency.
This is one hell of a problem.
We've all got a problem on this one. They're asking for a provision in their contract assuring them the freedom to live anywhere they choose. Now, personally, I'm not so sure that I disagree. But the city council is proposing a residency requirement that would make anyone living outside the city either move back in or face the possibility of being dismissed. Now, I'll tell you, Mr. Stone, I worked most of my life to get a home out in those suburbs, and I wouldn't like going back. Can't blame these guys, but what can we do?
The whole thing is a mess. Right now, about 30% of our employees live outside the city. If this bill is passed, we're going to have terrible problems with all our departments throughout the city.
Sure. I could write the best damn residency clause in the world and sign my name to it. But then along come the city fathers and legislate away my good faith. Now, how in the hell could we ever face them across the bargaining table again?
I'd like to talk with the union about this and about the other issues we've discussed. Is Jacob Morris still your city attorney?
Yes.
While I'm with the union, why don't you see if Mr. Morris can brief us on the legalities of the residency situation? One more thing. Do you have any flexibility on your contracting out proposal?
Flexibility is what we're trying to achieve. There are times when we must have the contractual freedom to subcontract out work.
Maintenance on equipment, for instance. To keep our warranties in force, we have to have our maintenance done by a private authorized representative of the manufacturer. We're paying for maintenance we could get free. Now, I know this whole subject used to make me a bit nervous when I was with the unit, I always thought it was a threat to my job. But the facts are we haven't laid off anybody as a result of subcontracting.
I've got an idea on this. Maybe we can talk about it later. Tom, why don't you check with Mr. Morris on residency while I go down and have a few words with the union?
Okay.
Now, on this arbitration problem, are you asking them to abolish the Employee Appeals Board?
Is that what they said?
That's what they seem to think you want.
How many times do we have to spell it out?
How about just one more time?
Mr. Stone, the Employee Appeals Board is like something out of the 20s. It's a set-up deal. I mean, a person goes up there to get an honest hearing on a problem, and the only people listening are a bunch of management people. They only hear what they want to hear. There is no union representation on the board.
We know they can't abolish the board. All we're asking is that there be impartial arbitration beyond the board, just so it's fair and binding. We'll even share the cost.
It's my feeling that you're closer to an agreement on this than either of you think. If I could get them to go for arbitration, could you move on the no-strike clause?
I don't really understand what they're trying to tell us with this no-strike thing. I mean, I think it's something the press stirred up. Once we sign a contract, we're not going to strike. In the first place, the statutes prohibit strikes for any reason. The whole thing's irrelevant.
If it's irrelevant, what's your problem?
Ted, you're the president of this local. What do you think?
If they give us arbitration, I think we can live with the no-strike clause.
I talked to the city about the holiday, and they're working on a counter offer. I'm not sure what the offer will be, but there's movement. So let's discuss money. They've indicated to me they're willing to move on wages. Now, this is just my guess, but common sense tells me that movement might depend on the length of the agreement. Do you think you can sell your membership on a 2-year contract?
2 is better than 3. We'll look at their counter proposal.
What about the educational incentives?
We talked about it. While I haven't been instructed to tell you there's an agreement, I can tell you it won't be a problem, especially if you can give them some relief on residency.
No deal, Mr. Mediator. You hear me, Joe? I don't want to hear anybody peddling away my farm.
Hear him out, Ed.
Nobody's going to tell me where to live.
There's just one question I want to ask at this point. If all other issues were resolved, including wages, if this were the only thing on the table and you couldn't get what you want, would you carry your people out on strike?
You bet your ass.
Murphy?
I'll have to say yes, Sam.
It's the only real leverage we've got, Mr. Stone. Not only are we just playing morally right, but we're negotiating from a position of strength. We've got the city backed against the wall, and we've got the mayor in the palm of our hand. They got to give in on this, or the mayor's going to be out of a job.
Hold on. Now, I'm not so sure the mayor is as vulnerable on this issue as you think. The people who would be hurt by the enactment of a residency bill are those who live outside the city, and they can't vote.
You can't tell me that a mayor who's responsible for keeping order in the city isn't taking a political risk if he allows a strike he could have easily avoided. No politician's going to take that kind of risk.
Joe, you've been around a long time. I know you understand how serious this kind of brinkmanship can be.
Nothing we do here is done lightly, Sam.
Callaway and his people are having the same problem with this issue as you are. They don't want a residency requirement any more than you do. But suppose they agree to a non-residency clause and they sign it, and the city council comes along and overrules it. What would you do then?
We'd hit the bricks.
Then your problem is not with Callaway, it's with the city council.
Then why aren't they sitting there across the table?
Well, I suppose, in a way they are.